Meanwhile, another possible mess to clean up on Wall Street, the insurance giant AIG, which has already received $150 billion in federal money, giving the U.S. government an 80% stake in the company. It now appears ready to ask for tens of billions more, but it is not ready to detail what more it needs nor why. Senator John Kerry saying today he will introduce a bill to end, quote, the extravagant spending practices of U.S. banks after reports today that one bank that accepted TARP money, Northern Trust, hosted lavish parties and concerts last week at the golf tournament it sponsored, the Northern Trust Open in Southern California. House Financial Services Committee Chairman Barney Frank, along with the 17 other Democrats on that committee, today sending a letter to the CEO of Northern Trust demanding that the bank pay back what it spent on the entertainment during that golf tournament and the sponsorship itself. Congressman Frank now joins us from the Capitol. Thank you for your time tonight, sir.
I'm glad to. This is a very important issue to discuss.
Indeed it is. Northern Trust says it didn't seek the bailout money. Instead, quote, it agreed to the government's goal of gaining the participation of all major banks in the United States. If that's the case, what would make them give any of that money back?
Well, I anticipated that argument. I thought that they would have this situation where they would say, oh, well, we didn't want the money in the first place. Therefore, we don't have to lend it out. We don't have to do anything about abating foreclosures, and we can continue to indulge ourselves in this luxury. So in the recovery bill that the president signed, I sponsored an amendment that makes it very clear they can give the money back. So while they were forced by George Bush to take it, according to them, and that's apparently the case, they're not forced by anybody to keep it. So the argument that they should not have to follow any restrictions in how they act with the money falls apart because they can give the money back. What they want to do is apparently keep the money and then indulge themselves in ways that are just inappropriate. And by the way, they say this is for marketing. You know, this is not a time when banks have to market loans. This is a time when there's a great scarcity of lending institutions. So if you're a bank and you've got money to lend, you don't have to go beg people to come borrow from you. They're begging you to lend to them. And it's also the case that putting up people in luxury hotels, your own staff, that's got nothing to do with marketing. I'm skeptical of the sports marketing anyway. I think it's more about some egos. But certainly at this time with public money, it's simply wrong.
I think I agree with you on that last point from several different directions, Congressman. But let me turn to AIG. $150 billion, and it might ask for tens of billions more. Where did that money go, and how might you plan on finding out where it went?
Well, we are going to have some hearings to find out. This is, of course, the beginning of this. Back in September, Secretary Paulson and Ben Bernanke, the two top Bush appointees, came to Congress and did not ask us, but informed us that they were going to be giving $80 billion to AIG. I remember at the time saying to the chairman of the Fed, do you have $80 billion? He said, oh, I had $800 billion. We're going to be looking at how we deal with that in the future. Apparently, there was a decision to give money to AIG without having fully understood how bad things were. There had been the argument that the insurance parts of AIG were making money, and that would allow them to pay back what we gave them to bail out these financial hoop-de-doos they got involved in. Now, that doesn't appear to be the case. So before any more money goes in there, we've got to have a very serious conversation about whether we're throwing good money after bad. This was a Bush administration initiative, but the Obama administration should not feel bound to keep throwing the money in.
About the stimulus package, Congressman, Senator Schumer's interpretation, he quoted Section 1607A to be exact, that it is all or nothing for these governors, not a la carte. Your reaction to that, and if it's interpreted that way, are the Republicans going to stand on their quote principles, unquote?
Probably not. They're standing on their soapboxes. I have to say, it is distressing to me that there are people who define courage as your willingness to endure the hardships of others. You know, I'm tough. I'm a governor. I don't care if that family doesn't have enough money to buy clothes for the kids or have an adequate diet. Giving away somebody else's unemployment is not my definition of courage. It's my definition of meanness. If you want to be courageous, deal with yourself. Don't inflict it on others. But as to 1607, Keith, I'm going to give you a rare confession of humility from a politician. I don't think I can recall the exact words of 1607. So I can't tell you what it says or not. Chuck Schumer is a pretty smart guy and a good lawyer, so I'd be inclined to think that he wouldn't have said that unless he got it right. But I want to go back to the principle here. What's the matter with a powerful elected official who's got a great life, and he's begrudging working people who've lost jobs through no fault of their own, and their children and their dependents, the small amount you get from unemployment? Again, if that's political courage, then I hope we have more cowardice.
Last question. It's a bit of a tangent about the effort to restrict CEO salaries and bonus structures and all of that. Is this true? Have you heard anything about this, that many of the banks and other firms have been formulating ways to get around this, to avoid whatever restrictions are in place for 2009 by deferring salaries, bonuses, whatever, into 2010 or even 2011?
If that's the case, there are ways to deal with that, and I think the Taxation Committee should be involved with that. But I have to give this message to the bankers. But we have this dilemma, Keith, as you know. A lot of problems came from mistakes made by people in the financial industry, by a failure of the government to regulate, and in the absence of regulation, they did irresponsible things. We now have this great frustration because we've got to get the credit system functioning again, and you can't simply throw out the current one and start from scratch. So we've got to work with these people, and in some ways they are beneficiaries, even though people want to just yell at them. If they are arrogant enough to take advantage of that situation and to benefit from things that we're doing, not to help them, but to get the system functioning, but which have the effect of helping them, and they are abusive, I can guarantee you that you're going to see changes in banking laws going forward that are going to severely restrict what they can do.
Amen. Congressman Barney Frank of Massachusetts, thanks for stopping by before the speech. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.